I stood in the fluorescent-lit chaos of JFK International Airport. My daughter Lily's small hand clutching mine, her tiny fingers trembling against my palm. The rain battered the terminal's glass walls, a relentless drumming that matched the pounding in my chest. My phone was dead, my wallet nearly empty, and the weight of betrayal sat heavy on my shoulders. My in-laws, the people I'd trusted to be family, had left us here, stranded, after I'd paid for every damn thing: their flights, their hotel, their entire extravagant vacation. I could still see their smug faces, hear their hollow promises as they waved us off at the gate. "We'll meet you at baggage claim," my mother-in-law, Diane, had said, her smile sharp as a blade. But they never came. They took their luggage, their entitlement, and vanished into the storm, leaving me and my 6-year-old daughter to fend for ourselves. The airport was a blur of strangers, their hurried footsteps echoing like accusations. Lily's eyes, wide and glassy, searched my face for answers I didn't have. "Mommy, where's Grandma? Where's Grandpa?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the din. I knelt beside her, brushing a damp curl from her forehead, and forced a smile. "They're probably just delayed, sweetheart. We'll find them." But I knew the truth. They'd planned this. Diane and Richard, my late husband's parents, had never forgiven me for his death. They blamed me for the car accident that took Michael 2 years ago, as if I'd willed the ice on the road, as if I'd chosen to lose the love of my life. This was their revenge, their twisted way of punishing me, and they didn't care that Lily was caught in the crossfire. I pulled Lily closer, her small body shivering in her thin jacket. We'd flown in from Chicago, our home, to meet them for what was supposed to be a family trip to New York, a chance to heal, to rebuild the fractured ties between us. I spent months saving for it, working overtime at the bookstore, scraping together every penny to cover their first-class tickets and the fancy hotel Diane insisted on. "It's what Michael would have wanted," she'd said, her voice dripping with false sincerity. I believed her. I believed we could be a family again, for Lily's sake. How naive I'd been. The baggage claim area was nearly deserted now, the conveyor belt silent, our lone suitcase circling like a ghost. I checked my watch 2:17 The last flight from Chicago had landed hours ago, and the storm outside showed no signs of letting up. I had $23 in cash, a maxed-out credit card, and no way to charge my phone. The airport's free Wi-Fi was spotty, and the charging stations were crowded with weary travelers. I felt the weight of every decision I'd made, every moment I'd trusted Diane and Richard, pressing down on me. They knew I'd spent everything on this trip. They knew we had nowhere to go. Lily yawned, her head drooping against my arm. "I'm tired, Mommy," she murmured. My heart ached. I couldn't let her see my fear, couldn't let her know how close we were to breaking. "I know, baby," I said, lifting her into my arms despite the ache in my back. "Let's find somewhere to sit." We shuffled to a row of hard plastic chairs near the exit, the cold seeping through my damp clothes. I wrapped my scarf around Lily, tucking it under her chin, and sat her on my lap. Her breathing slowed, her eyelids fluttering as she drifted into an uneasy sleep. I stared out at the rain, my mind racing. This wasn't just abandonment, it was deliberate. Diane's voice echoed in my head. Her words from months ago when I'd begged her to stop blaming me for Michael's death. You don't deserve to be part of this family. She'd hissed. You never did. I'd swallowed my pain then. For Lily. For the hope that time would soften their grief. But now, sitting in this desolate terminal, I realized they'd never intended to forgive me. They'd lured me here, drained my savings, and left us to drown in their spite. Anger simmered beneath my exhaustion, a slow burn that warmed my numb limbs. They thought they could break me, that I'd crumble without them. But I was Lily's mother, and I'd survived worse than their cruelty. Michael's death had shattered me, but I'd pieced myself back together for our daughter. I wasn't the fragile widow they imagined. I leaned my head back, closing my eyes, and made a silent vow. They'd pay for this not with violence, not with their kind of venom, but with the truth. I'd find a way to expose their selfishness, to show the world who they really were. And I'd do it for Lily, for Michael, for the family we'd built before they tore it apart. The rain kept falling, a curtain between us and the world outside. I held Lily tighter, her warmth grounding me. Somewhere in this storm, I'd find a way out. I had to. For her. The airport terminal felt like a prison, its sterile lights and endless announcements mocking our plight. Lily slept fitfully in my arms, her soft breaths a fragile reminder of why I couldn't give up. My mind churned, replaying every interaction with Diane and Richard, searching for the moment I should have seen this coming. They'd been cold since Michael's funeral, their grief twisting into something sharp and pointed, aimed at me. I tried to bridge the gap, inviting them to Lily's birthday parties, sending photos of her milestones, but they'd always kept me at arm's length. This trip was supposed to change that. Instead, it was their final blow. I shifted Lily gently, my arms aching under her weight, and scanned the terminal for options. A lone security guard stood near the exit, his radio crackling. I considered asking for help. But what could I say? My in-laws abandoned us. It sounded pathetic, even to me. Besides, I had no proof, just a gnawing certainty in my gut. I needed a plan, something concrete to get us out of this mess. My eyes landed on a payphone across the concourse, a relic from another era. If I could call someone I knew might have a chance. I eased Lily onto the chair, tucking my scarf around her like a blanket, and dug through my purse for change. The $23 in my wallet felt like a lifeline. I crossed the terminal, the payphone's receiver cold against my ear. I dialed my sister, Emily, in Chicago, praying she'd pick up despite the hour. The line rang and rang, each unanswered tone tightening the knot in my chest. Finally, her groggy voice answered. Hello. Em. It's me, I said, my voice cracking. I'm at JFK. Diane and Richard, they left us. Me and Lily. We're stranded. There was a pause, then a sharp intake of breath. They what? Anna, are you serious? I spilled the story in a rush, the words tumbling out how I'd paid for their trip, how they'd promised to meet us, how they'd disappeared. Emily's outrage mirrored my own, her voice rising with every detail. Those people are monsters, she said. I'm booking you a flight home right now. Stay where you are. I can't afford it, I admitted, shame burning my cheeks. I'm out of money. I spent everything. I've got you, she said firmly. I'll cover the tickets. Just stay safe. Okay. I'll call you back in 10 minutes. I hung up, relief warring with the sting of dependence. Emily had always been my rock, but asking for help felt like admitting defeat. I returned to Lily, who stirred as I sat beside her. Mommy, she mumbled, her eyes half open. I'm here, baby, I whispered, stroking her hair. We're going to be okay. But as I sat there, waiting for Emily's call, my anger grew. Diane and Richard hadn't just left us, they'd calculated every step. They knew I'd be broke, that I'd have no way to follow them. I pictured Diane's smug smile, Richard's indifferent nod as they walked away, and my hands clenched into fists. They thought they'd won, that their cruelty would go unanswered. But they didn't know me. Not really. I started piecing together a plan. Not just to survive this night, but to make them face what they'd done. They were wealthy, connected, always flaunting their perfect lives on social media, charity galas, church fundraisers, their impeccable reputation. What if I could expose them? Not with lies, but with the truth of their actions. I'd seen Diane's posts about this trip, how she'd framed it as a family reunion to her followers, painting herself as the grieving mother bringing us together. The hypocrisy made my blood boil. Emily called back, her voice brisk. I got you and Lily on a 6A flight to Chicago. I'm emailing you the tickets. There's a charging station near the food court. Go plug in your phone. Thank you, I said, tears pricking my eyes. I don't know how I'll repay you. You don't have to, she said. Just get home. And Anna, don't let those people get away with this. Her words lit a spark in me. I carried Lily to the food court, her head lolling against my shoulder, and found an open outlet. As my phone charged, I opened Diane's social media, her latest post glowing on the screen, a photo of her and Richard at a fancy Manhattan restaurant. Captioned, "Celebrating family and new beginnings." The timestamp was an hour ago. They'd left us and gone to dinner, as if we didn't exist. I stared at the photo, my resolve hardening. This wasn't over. I'd get us home, but I wouldn't let them walk away unscathed. They'd feel the weight of their betrayal, just as I did now. The food court was a ghost town, the smell of stale coffee and fried food lingering in the air. Lily curled up on a bench beside me, her soft snores a small comfort as I scrolled through my phone, now partially charged. Diane's social media post burned in my mind, her polished smile a stark contrast to the rain-soaked reality of our situation. I wanted to scream, to call her out right then. But I knew better. Revenge needed patience, precision. I wasn't going to stoop to their level with a rash outburst. I'd hit them where it hurt most, their pristine image. I opened my email, finding the tickets Emily had sent. The flight was in a few hours. A lifeline back to Chicago. Back to safety. But safety wasn't enough. I needed justice. Not just for me but for Lily, who deserved better than grandparents who'd discard her like trash. I started typing notes on my phone, documenting every detail of their betrayal, the texts where Diane begged for this trip, the receipts for their flights, the promises they'd made. I wasn't sure how I'd use it yet, but the truth was my weapon, and I'd wield it carefully. The terminal's clock ticked closer to dawn, the rain outside slowing to a drizzle. I glanced at Lily, her face peaceful despite the chaos. She was the reason I'd kept trying with Diane and Richard, the reason I'd swallowed their insults and paid for their luxuries. Michael had loved his parents, flawed as they were, and I'd wanted Lily to have that connection. But they'd severed it themselves, and I wouldn't let them hurt her again. A janitor pushed a mop across the floor nearby, his tired eyes meeting mine for a moment. "You okay, ma'am?" he asked, his voice kind but weary. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Just waiting for a flight." He nodded back, moving on, and I felt a pang of gratitude for his small gesture. It reminded me there were still good people in the world, people who didn't scheme or betray. Unlike my in-laws, who'd spent years building a facade of generosity while harboring resentment. I thought back to the early days of my marriage, when Diane's criticism was subtly raised eyebrow at my cooking, a comment about my simple job at the bookstore. Richard was quieter, but his silence was complicity, letting Diane's venom flow unchecked. After Michael's death, their disdain turned overt, their grief a weapon they aimed at me. My phone buzzed. A text from Emily, "You at the gate yet? I'm worried." I replied, assuring her we were fine, though fine was a stretch. I was exhausted, my body aching from carrying Lily and our suitcase, my mind frayed from the betrayal. But Emily's support anchored me, reminding me I wasn't alone. I pictured her in her cozy Chicago apartment, probably pacing as she worried about us. She'd always been the practical one, the one who'd urged me to stand up to Diane years ago. I wished I'd listened. As I waited, I started searching for ways to expose Diane and Richard. Their social media was a goldmine of hypocrisy posts about family values, charity work, their perfect life. I found a local New York blogger who'd written about their church fundraisers, praising their selfless devotion. The irony made my stomach churn. I drafted an email to the blogger, anonymous for now, outlining what they'd done to us. I didn't send it not yet. I needed more, something undeniable, something that would make their followers see the truth. Lily stirred, blinking up at me. "Are we going home soon?" she asked, her voice small. "Soon, sweetheart," I said, kissing her forehead. "We're going to be okay." She nodded, trusting me completely, and that trust fueled my resolve. I opened my phone again, this time digging into Diane's financial trail. I'd seen her use a shared family account for some of the trip expenses, one Michael had set up years ago. If I could access it, maybe I'd find proof of their spending, proof they'd used my money and left us with nothing. It was a long shot, but I logged into the old account using Michael's password, something Diane never bothered to change. The account activity loaded, and my breath caught. Thousands of dollars, withdrawn in the past week, all linked to Diane's name. Hotel charges, restaurant bills, even a spa day while I'd been scraping by to pay for their flights. My hands shook as I screenshot everything, evidence piling up. This was it. The truth they couldn't hide. I'd make them face it, not just for me, but for every lie they told about being a loving family. The first rays of dawn crept through the terminal's windows, casting a pale glow over the empty seats. Lily was awake now, nibbling on a granola bar I'd found in my purse, her eyes heavy with sleep. I watched her, my heart swelling with love and guilt. She shouldn't be here, stuck in this cold, impersonal place because of her grandparents' cruelty. I smoothed her hair, whispering promises I wasn't sure I could keep. We're almost home, Lily. Just a little longer. My phone, now at 20% battery, buzzed with another text from Emily, Gate C12. Boarding starts at 5:30. You got this. I gathered our things, lifting Lily and our suitcase, and made my way to the gate. The airport was waking up, travelers trickling in, their faces a mix of exhaustion and purpose. I envied their certainty, their ability to move forward without the weight of betrayal dragging them down. But I had a purpose to getting Lily home, and making Diane and Richard pay for what they'd done. At the gate, I sat Lily on a chair and checked my phone again. The screenshots from the family account burned in my mind, each transaction a stab of anger. Diane and Richard had spent over $5,000 in the past week, all on luxuries, all while knowing I'd covered their travel costs. I opened the email I'd drafted to the blogger, adding the screenshots as attachments. My fingers hesitated over the send button. This was a line I couldn't uncross, a public accusation that would ripple through their carefully curated world. But they'd crossed a line too, leaving their granddaughter stranded. I hit send, my heart pounding. The gate agent called our flight, and I guided Lily through the boarding process, her small hand in mine. As we settled into our seats, I felt a flicker of relief. We were escaping, at least for now. But the anger lingered, a fire I couldn't douse. I thought about Michael, how he'd loved his parents despite their flaws, how he'd believed they could change. He'd been wrong, and I'd paid the price for his hope. On the plane, Lily pressed her face to the window, watching the clouds. Are Grandma and Grandpa mad at us? She asked suddenly, her voice small. I froze, searching for words that wouldn't hurt her. They're confused. Sweetheart, I said finally. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes. She nodded, accepting my answer, but her question lingered. I hated that she felt their rejection, that their cruelty had touched her innocence. I pulled her close, letting her rest against me as the plane hummed toward Chicago. My mind drifted to the email I'd sent. The blogger might ignore it, or she might dig deeper. Either way, I planted a seed, one that could unravel Diane and Richard's facade. Back in Chicago, Emily was waiting at the airport, her familiar face a beacon in the crowd. She hugged us both, her arms fierce and protective. You're safe now, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Let's get you home. At my apartment, Lily fell asleep on the couch, exhausted from the ordeal. Emily sat with me at the kitchen table, a mug of tea warming my hands. I told her about the email, the screenshots, my plan to expose Diane and Richard. She listened, her expression a mix of admiration and caution. You're playing with fire, Anna, she said. They're not going to take this lying down. I know, I said, my voice steady. But they started this. I'm finishing it. Emily nodded, squeezing my hand. Just be careful. For Lily's sake. That night, I checked my phone obsessively, waiting for a response from the blogger. Nothing yet. But as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I felt a shift inside me. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was fighting back. Not with their cruelty, but with something stronger truth. I thought about Michael, how he'd want me to protect Lily, to stand up for what was right. And I thought about redemption, not just for me, but for the family we could still be. Without Diane and Richard's poison. I drifted to sleep, the weight of the day lifting slightly. Tomorrow, to keep fighting. For Lily. For justice. For the life we deserved. The morning light filtered through my apartment's curtains. Soft and golden. A stark contrast to the storm we'd left behind in New York. Lily was still asleep, her small form curled under a blanket on the couch. I sat at the kitchen table, my laptop open, the email to the blogger staring back at me. No response yet, but the act of sending it had shifted something in me. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was taking control. Diane and Richard had underestimated me, but they wouldn't for long. Emily had left late last night, promising to check in later. Her support was a lifeline, but this fight was mine. I opened the family account again, digging deeper into the transactions. There were more charges, boutique shops, a Broadway show, even a deposit for a vacation home rental. My stomach twisted. They hadn't just used my money. They were living a fantasy while leaving us to drown. I saved every detail, building a case I could use if the blogger took the bait. Lily stirred, rubbing her eyes as she padded into the kitchen. "Mommy, can we have pancakes?" she asked, her voice bright despite everything. "Of course, baby," I said, forcing a smile. I mixed batter, the routine grounding me, and watched her chatter about school, her friends, the life we'd built here. She didn't mention Diane or Richard, and I wondered if she sensed their betrayal, even if she couldn't name it. As we ate, my phone buzzed an email from the blogger, Sarah Klein. My heart raced as I opened it. "Dear Anonymous," it read, "Your story is compelling, but I need more to go on. Can you provide verifiable proof? I'd like to meet if you're in New York." I cursed under my breath. I wasn't in New York, and I couldn't afford to go back. But Sarah's interest was a spark, a chance to expose Diane and Richard to their community. I replied, attaching more screenshots and explaining our situation, careful to keep my identity vague for now. I hit send, my hands trembling with hope and fear. The day passed in a blur of normalcy, taking Lily to school, working a shift at the bookstore, pretending everything was fine. But my mind was elsewhere, plotting my next move. I remembered a friend of Michael's, Tom, a lawyer who'd handled our will after the accident. He'd always been kind, offering to help if we ever needed it. I called him, my voice steady as I explained what had happened. "That's fraud, Anna," Tom said, his tone serious. "If they used your money under false pretenses, you might have a case. Send me everything you have." I emailed him the screenshots, my notes, every piece of evidence. He promised to look into it, warning me it would take time. Time was something I didn't have, not with Diane and Richard still out there, living their lie. I checked their social media again, Finding a new post a photo of them at a charity gala. Captioned, "Giving back to our community." The hypocrisy was staggering. That evening, I sat with Lily, helping her with her homework. She drew a picture of our family, just the two of us, smiling under a bright sun. "This is us, Mommy," she said, her eyes shining. "We don't need anyone else." Her words hit me hard. She was right, but I couldn't let go of the need for justice. Not yet. I tucked her into bed, reading her favorite story, and promised myself I'd protect her from this pain. But as I lay awake, my phone lit up with another email from Sarah. "I verified some of your claims," she wrote. "This could be big. Can we talk tomorrow?" I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. This was a chance to expose Diane and Richard, to tear down their facade. But doubt crept in. What if this backfired? What if they turned it around? Made me the villain? I thought of Lily, of her trust in me, and knew I had to keep going. Not just for revenge, but for the truth. For the life we could build without their shadow. I replied to Sarah, setting a time to talk. Tomorrow, I take the next step. For Lily. For Michael. For me. The call with Sarah Klein came at noon, her voice crisp and professional over the phone. I sat in my apartment, Lily at school, the quiet amplifying my nerves. "I've looked into the financial records you sent," Sarah said. "They're damning. But I need to confirm your identity and more details about the incident. This could be a major story, but it's sensitive. Diane and Richard are well known in their community." I hesitated, my instinct to protect Lily warring with my need for justice. "I'll give you what you need," I said finally, "but I want to keep my daughter out of it." "Understood," Sarah replied. "Let's start with your story. Tell me everything." I poured it out: the trip, the betrayal, the airport, the financial records. Sarah listened, asking sharp questions, her journalist's mind piecing it together. By the end, she was quiet for a moment. "This is big, Anna," she said. "I'll need to contact them for comment, but I'll protect your privacy as much as I can." The call ended, and I felt exposed, like I'd handed a stranger my heart. But Sarah's interest was a lifeline, a chance to make Diane and Richard face their actions. I checked in with Tom, who'd reviewed the evidence. "You've got a solid case for fraud," he said. "We can file a civil suit, maybe even push for criminal charges if we can prove intent. But it's a long road. Anna, are you sure?" "I'm sure," I said, my voice firm. I wasn't just fighting for money, I was fighting for Lily's future, for the truth to be known. Days passed, each one a tightrope walk between hope and dread. Sarah worked on her story, sending me updates as she dug into Diane and Richard's finances. They'd been sloppy, leaving a trail of transactions that corroborated my story. Meanwhile, Tom prepared legal documents, warning me that Diane and Richard might retaliate. I didn't care. Let them try. Lily kept me grounded, her laughter filling the apartment as we played board games or baked cookies. But her questions about her grandparents grew quieter, as if she sensed their absence was permanent. One night, as I tucked her in, she asked, "Did I do something wrong, Mommy?" No, baby, I said, my throat tight. You're perfect. They just made a bad choice. Her eyes searched mine, and I saw Michael in her, the same quiet strength, the same trust. I kissed her forehead, vowing to make this right. Then Sarah's story broke. I saw it first on her blog, a detailed exposé titled Charity Champions or Family Betrayers. It laid out everything: the trip, the abandonment, the financial records, without naming me or Lily. Social media erupted. Diane and Richard's followers shocked, their comments a mix of disbelief and outrage. I watched their carefully built world crack, their gala photos buried under accusations. Diane called me that night, her voice venomous. How dare you drag our name through the mud? She spat. You'll regret this, Anna. You left us, I said, my voice calm but steel-edged. You left your granddaughter. This is on you. She hung up, but her threat lingered. I didn't sleep, my mind racing with what they might do. The next day, Tom called with news. They're countersuing, he said, claiming defamation. It's a weak case, but they're fighting dirty. I wasn't surprised. Diane and Richard thrived on control, on appearances. But I had the truth, and I had Sarah's story gaining traction. Local news picked it up, then a national outlet. Their reputation was crumbling, and I felt a strange mix of triumph and guilt. I didn't want to destroy them. Not really. I wanted them to understand the pain they'd caused, to feel the weight of their choices. That evening, I sat with Lily, watching her draw. She sketched a house with a garden, a place where we were safe, happy. This is our home, she said, smiling. Just us. I hugged her, tears in my eyes. Maybe this was redemption, not just exposing Diane and Richard, but building a life where Lily and I didn't need their approval. The fight wasn't over, but I was ready. For her. For us. The fallout from Sarah's story was relentless. Diane and Richard's countersuit hit the news, painting me as a vindictive liar trying to tarnish their legacy. I read the headlines at my kitchen table, my coffee growing cold as I scrolled through comments calling me ungrateful, unstable, a gold digger. It stung, but I'd expected it. They were fighting to save face, and they had the money and connections to make it loud. But I had something they didn't, Lily. And the truth. Tom called daily, updating me on the legal battle. Their defamation suit was shaky, built on bluster rather than evidence. But it was draining. I couldn't afford a long fight, not with my savings gone and my bookstore job barely covering rent. Emily offered to help, but I hated leaning on her again. You're not alone, Anna, she said, her voice fierce. We'll get through this. I clung to her words, but doubt crept in. Had I gone too far? The exposé had exposed their cruelty, but it had also pulled Lily and me into a public storm. She didn't understand the headlines, but she sensed the tension, asking why I was so quiet, why I checked my phone so often. I shielded her as best I could, keeping her days filled with school and playdates. But the weight of this fight was heavy. Then Sarah called with a breakthrough. I found someone, she said. A former employee of Diane's charity. She says they've been skimming donations for years. Your story gave her the courage to come forward. My heart raced. This was bigger than our abandonment. Bigger than my pain. If Diane and Richard were stealing from their charity, their whole facade would collapse. Can you prove it? I asked. She's got documents, Sarah said. I'm meeting her tomorrow. If this checks out, it's game over for them. I hung up, a mix of hope and fear swirling in my chest. Exposing their charity fraud could end this, but it also meant diving deeper into their world, risking more retaliation. I thought of Michael, how he'd trusted his parents, how he'd believed in their goodness. I believed it too, once. Now, I saw them for what they were, people who'd hurt anyone, even their own granddaughter, to protect their image. That night, I dreamed of Michael. He was standing in our old backyard, Lily running toward him, her laughter echoing. You're doing the right thing, he said, his voice warm, steady. I woke with tears on my cheeks, his words lingering. I wasn't just fighting for justice, I was fighting for him, for the family he'd wanted us to be. The next day, Sarah's new story hit, detailing the charity fraud with documents and the employee's testimony. The backlash was swift. Diane and Richard's social media flooded with demands for answers. Their countersuit faltered, their lawyer scrambling to deflect. Tom called, his voice triumphant. They're backing off, he said. The fraud allegations are too big. They can't fight both battles. I felt a flicker of victory, but it was bittersweet. I didn't want to destroy them. Not entirely. I wanted them to see what they'd done, to feel the pain they'd caused. I wrote them a letter, not to send, but to clear my own heart. You left us, I wrote. You chose your pride over your granddaughter. I hope you can live with that. Lily came home from school, her backpack bouncing as she ran to me. Look, Mommy, she said, holding up a drawing of a rainbow. It's for you. I hugged her, the weight of the past weeks lifting slightly. Maybe this was enough, her smile, her trust, our life together. But as I tucked her in that night, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You'll pay for this. It read. No name. But I knew it was Diane. Fear spiked, but I pushed it down. They'd lost their power over me. I was done running, done hiding. Tomorrow, I'd meet with Tom to plan our next steps. The fight wasn't over, but I was ready. For Lily. For redemption. The threat from Diane hung over me like a storm cloud, but I refused to let it paralyze me. I forwarded the text to Tom, who assured me it could be used as evidence of harassment if needed. They're desperate, he said. Their world's falling apart. Stay strong. I nodded, gripping my phone, determined to protect Lily from their reach. The charity fraud story had exploded, with news outlets digging into Diane and Richard's finances, their reputation in tatters. Part of me wanted to gloat, but the larger part just wanted peace for Lily. For me. For the memory of Michael. Days turned into weeks, and the legal battle slowed. Their countersuit was dismissed, the evidence of their fraud too overwhelming. Tom negotiated a settlement, recovering some of the money they'd taken from the family account. It wasn't everything, but it was enough to pay Emily back and cover rent for a few months. More importantly, it was a victory, a tangible sign that their actions had consequences. I met Sarah in person when she visited Chicago for a follow-up story. Over coffee, she thanked me for my courage. "You didn't just expose them," she said. "You gave others the strength to speak out." Her words settled in my chest, a reminder that this wasn't just about revenge. It was about truth, about breaking the cycle of their lies. Lily thrived, her resilience a light in the darkness. She stopped asking about her grandparents, her world filled with school, friends, and our quiet moments together. One evening, as we planted flowers in our small balcony garden, she looked at me with Michael's eyes and said, "I'm happy, Mommy. Are you?" I paused, the question catching me off guard. Was I happy? I'd been so consumed by the fight, by the need for justice, that I hadn't stopped to consider it. But looking at her, dirt smudged on her cheeks, her smile bright, I realized I was. Not because I'd won, but because we were free. Free from Diane and Richard's poison. Free to build a life on our terms. "Yeah, baby," I said, pulling her close. "I'm happy." I thought about redemption, how it wasn't just about exposing their wrongs but about finding my own strength. I'd spent years trying to earn their approval, to fit into their idea of family. But they'd never deserved us. Michael had known that, deep down, and I wished I'd seen it sooner. One night, I found an old photo of Michael, Lily, and me, taken at a park years ago. We were laughing, the sun bright behind us. I framed it, placing it on our mantel, a reminder of the family we were, the family we still could be. Diane and Richard faded into the background, their threats empty, their power gone. The settlement money helped, but it was the intangible victories that mattered most. Lily's trust, my own resilience, the truth laid bare. I started writing again, something I'd abandoned after Michael's death. Short stories, journal entries, pieces of our journey. They weren't for publication. Not yet. But they were for me. A way to reclaim my voice. As spring bloomed, I took Lily to the park. The same one from the photo. She ran ahead, her laughter echoing, and I felt Michael's presence. Not as a ghost but as a warmth in my heart. I'd fought for justice. Not just for us but for him. For the love we'd shared. And in that fight, I'd found something else myself. The storm was over. The rain long gone. We were home. Not just in our apartment but in each other. Diane and Richard could keep their broken world. We had ours. And it was enough.